Welcome back to Case Closed Anime Review, episode number 11. No, 11, 12. This is reviewing the 12th season of Case Closed, which was roughly 38 episodes. Yeah, it took me a while for this season. Oh gosh, yes, it took me a freaking long time. The the series are considered part of the season are episodes 316 to 353. Not many filler episodes this season. No, not that many. I mean, kind of like the previous season, not that many. I mean, the first filler episodes doesn't come into like 3 episodes in. I mean, first you have these are the filler episodes of the season. Episodes 318, the 322, 328, 337, 342, 348, 349, and 352, 353. There are many multi-parters. As a matter of fact, the season ends with 4 straight. Yes, 4 straight two-parters. Yeah, and the season starts off with two two-parters. First one is called The Tarnished Masked Hero. Yeah, that's the first one. This one involves a murder happening at a wrestling event. Yes, the first of the series. Oh, in case you're wondering, is this a filler episode? No, it's actually canon. Yep, it will record for the manga. Yes, and from what I can tell from the way that they depict this episode, it's kind of true in a way. You know the whole thing about a wrestler wearing a mask that's kind of like a wolf. It looks like this character's mask is loosely inspired by Tiger Mask. Those who know what the heck Tiger Mask is, I've seen pictures. I've never seen actual footage of him. What he is he's basically, there was a series about several wrestlers who basically wore this particular mask, all Japanese, and they basically just compete like in junior heavyweight stuff. Yes, junior heavyweight is an actual class for wrestling, and in Japan, particularly for one particular organization I've looked up, there is an actual championship called the Junior Heavyweight Championship, and in this show they have a character called Wolf Mask in here, and he's the holder of the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Oddly enough, they don't show what the belt looks like in here. Yes, not kidding about that. They also have it where he reveals identity to Richard and Rachel and Conan, who just happened to be at this wrestling event. Yeah, it turns out they actually were invited to this thing. Yes, they were invited. And they do see some wrestling in here, a little bit, not much. And apparently, most people is actually very familiar. And apparently, there's actually several different wolf masks, like masks. The wolf mask, like there's an eating mask, where it's like partially open, like near the bottom, so you can basically see public eating. Yeah, and apparently, Wolf Mask has a thing where he doesn't understand English. Apparently, he's Mexican. Yes, because the whole thing with of the whole lucha libre thing. Yeah, that's the whole thing when it comes to that. Yeah, as to figure who the murderer is, now the guy who got killed is pretty much a jerk, anyways, and he really wanted to be the one to actually defeat them, and of course take off his mask. And he gets killed via, I think he's like stabbed at the, I believe he is. Yeah, I believe he's stabbed, and he's kept in a separate waiting room. For what I know about this is partially true. I have been to a wrestling event like 19 years ago. I've been to the locker room, and from what I can tell in this arena, yes, this is what the backstage area actually looks like. Well, for a not really big league one, no. If it was WWE, if it would be a lot more stuff around. This is not very much, very minimal at best behind the scenes. Yeah, so, and of course it's a small organization. And here's the thing, apparently when they're not wrestling, they apparently have to wear like jackets and pants like they're part of some high school football team. Yes. This is kind of true in real life with what I've heard about WWE, where when the wrestlers are not competing, they have to wear suits when they're in public. Yeah, I'm not kidding about that. They actually literally have to do that. Yeah, I know because I've heard about this stuff. hmm So yeah, the guy who they find out who actually is the killer actually is the guy who's the beefiest out of all these wrestlers. Yeah, apparently he's basically he really wanted to be a Tiger Mask, but he has no experience wearing the mask because they actually have few other wrestlers actually try on the mask, and of course the original one basically has no problem with it. In the case of the last one, he apparently has to look. Apparently the eyesight from what they described this. I don't know if this is true or not. People who basically wore masks in the ring. But half the time the vision is very much impaired and they can't see very well on these masks. I don't know if this is true or not when it comes to actual masks the wrestlers wear. So that I don't know. But from what I can tell, it's mask. And the whole thing about laces being tied up in the back of the mask, that actually is true. Yes, that is actually a true fact about actual wrestling masks. How do I know that? I've seen footage of mask wrestlers when they actually have to tap their mask. There are laces on the back of these masks. As far as I can tell, I've seen footage of this happen a couple times in WCW. I didn't watch WCW when it was around. They saw a couple wrestlers. One basically wasn't really a problem. The other, of course, was a terrible idea. They're lucky enough to get permission to put it back on. That was Mysterio. The first one was Psychosis. Yep. So yeah. And oh yeah, and his punishment? Being slapped for killing him. And then he gets arrested. Simple as that. Next comes a filler episode. The Cigar Case Fortune. Yeah, this is all about an attempted murder, and it turns out the president was a really terrible person. Yeah. And he also sabotaged this person's brakes. Yeah. And because filler episode, what's the scenario that starts off the episode? Richard Moore rents a car that goes someplace and it breaks down. They have to solve a murder. Or he gets lost. This is generally what happens at the beginning of almost every single filler episode. It's not terrible, but at least there's something slightly different with this one. At least they have it where he breaks down at the start of the episode instead of breaking down about 5 minutes in. Yeah, at least they actually bothered to change that up. And there was actually a place nearby, and it was some fact, kind of like a company that develops special recliner chairs that kind of like built-in massagers. One looks like it's something out of the future. Oh yeah, and this thing was also used to try to kill this president of this company. Yeah, and this guy really wanted these particular people under contract so badly. I don't know if this is true or not when it comes to people who make these type of inventions. I'm not an expert at doing that type of thing, but so it turns out that the president was responsible for killing the other guy by sabotaging his brakes. And the reason why? Because he wanted to leave his contract. Yep, that's simply the gist of it. It's an odd little two-parter, but at least it's kind of interesting. Ninja Art. The Art of Alibi Construction. Yep. This apparently is loose fill up to another episode. I barely remember this one. Yeah, where the person who killed this particular guy was a guy that Richard Moore met before, and Conan's to find out exactly why he killed him. And that's simply, yeah, it was a pretty quick one. It's a pretty useless one, basically. Yeah, we know who it is. Find the evidence. That's it. Next comes 2 straight two-parters. Yes. The first one is the Vanisher's Kidnapper's Getaway Car. Yeah. This also involves some rich kid who actually was kidnapped. Now, it was assumed it was done by his future stepmother, but no, she had nothing to do with this at all. Yeah, it turns out it was actually the butler. He was actually not the butler. It was the chauffeur behind the kidnapping. Yep, and looking up Saito and Takashi shows up in this episode. Really interesting one. I kind of like this one, especially since it's the first time in the series that Conan's been kidnapped. Well, in a filler episode, and he managed to catch the guy pretty easily. Somehow he's able to unlock the guy's trunk, which has the ransom money. Yes. And The kid is able to accept this new woman as his future stepmother. Here's kind of the weird thing about this relationship. Okay, she is rough. Now, she is exactly 10 years younger than her future husband. Yeah, and it turns out prior to this episode, this kid's his biological actually passed away prior to this, and she apparently is a woman who runs fashion. She's a fashion designer, and this apparently was her third one. She's gonna be in huge debt. Luckily enough that, well, she was definitely gonna marry the guy. That was no problem, and she really wanted to focus on the show first, then worry about the wedding. And apparently the show was a big success. Oh yeah, and as a thank you for helping save her stepson, she invited the Detective Boys along. She invited Detective Boys to the fashion show. Now, Amy enjoyed it. The guys are just like staring like, okay. Yeah, they look so bored. Yeah, George, Mitch, and Conan are just so bored at a fashion show. I would be too, because I'm not into fashion. I'm not into fashion at all. It's something women might be into, or at least people who are basically fashion reporters. I am not into that at all. Not much anyway. Oh, this one. Harley and his childhood friend are held hostage by a overweight female lawyer who apparently is a crooked lawyer who taking bribes and kickbacks, and apparently taught people how basically to avoid tax evasion. Well, at least commit tax evasion, or at least basically find a way to avoid being caught by it. Yeah, and somehow Conan was able to find out exactly how they're able to get to it right away, and yeah, able to solve the problem, to solve the situation, no problem. Yeah, it was actually a really good two-parter, and apparently there was something that Harley really wanted to tell Kasha, and it was that her ponytail was bothering her. Yeah, she was kind of hoping that maybe he'll reveal that he has feelings for her, but nope. I mean, she probably suspects that he has feelings for her, but at this point, nothing comes of me. Yeah, the only reason why they won't reveal their feelings is because they're too stubborn. Yeah, this actually is a really good two-parter. I believe next is I think it's yeah, these are three candidate episodes. The Red Horse Among the Flames. Yeah, it's a three-parter involving a series of arson incidents, and the person behind it is actually the feng shui teacher. I believe it is, right? No, actually, it's the husband of the victim of this one. Yes, and it was suspected it was a salesman, but no evidence to support it. But it was an interesting little three-parter involving a little miniature horse that was the key to all this. Oh yeah, and somehow the police believe a little boy just a train. Believe a little boy about seeing a shadow of a horse in his window, and both Conan and Harley proved that yep, this boy was definitely telling the truth. Yep, but it was an interesting one. This actually was a follow-up to the Desperate Situation, which was a really good idea to do. Of course, they mentioned stuff like that. But yeah, it was a really good three-parter. 328 just a filler episode all about birthday wine. Yeah, just an okay little two-part, not much around how about. Yeah, and this woman got poisoned by a guy, and apparently she poisoned her prior to getting the glass. Yep. Friendship about money. This was a really good one. Apparently, Amy wanted to call her by calling Anita by first name. Eventually, she does by the end of the two-parter. Yeah, and apparently Anita realizes that she really want to do that, and by the end of two-parter, that she's allowed to do it. And George and Mitch are like, hey, maybe we can go Amy. It's like, nope, only Amy only. Yeah, I thought that was so funny. And the murder case was not that much interesting per se, but it was all about them finding out that the murderer actually was not rich. She was actually very much in debt, and this was actually during a camping trip. It was a quite interesting one, but the biggest highlight was the character element of Amy's character development. Hello, Anita's. Oh boy, we have this was actually quite something. We have one, two, three, yes, three two-parters in a row. First, it's the spicy curry. Yep, it's involving a death. The murder victim is the father of some tennis instructor, and apparently this guy didn't care very much that his own daughter-in-law passed away. Yeah, so the guy poisoned he killed his father because, well, he was very bitter. He basically didn't. It was implied he may have been involved with his wife's death, so he said to kill his own father. Okay, nothing really much to this one, but from what I heard, this tennis course in the beginning of this one does come back later on. But it's quite interesting that we have a tennis course shown here. I like Princess. Yeah, this is basically when Vivian Kudo shows up in the series again at the end of the first part, and Rachel and Conan were thinking that Aaron and Vivian might start a fight, but no, they just basically hold hands and hi, because they're both old friends, and they mentioned about a beauty pageant that happened at the high school about 20 years for events of the series, and apparently Richard Moore got in debt. Lucky enough, he was able to get out of debt after they solved the case. And it turns out that this guy got killed by his butler. Yep. All because he wanted to destroy the garden. That's really the reason why. But that was kind of a funny little highlight. And it was revealed that he actually voted for Vivian because she was a beautiful one. And he didn't really understand the whole concept of this beauty pageant, so Aaron takes the money, takes it for pay off the bills, like 10% of the profit. It was basically like 1 million yen, and of course, like housing allowance, like groceries, and of course Rachel's own allowance. And by the time I got Richard, it got a little bit enough to basically pay for his dry cleaning bill, which apparently, get this, when he was knocked out, apparently woke up, and apparently Aaron took the time to tie him to a freaking couch. Yeah, tied him up to a couch. And apparently he decided to pee his pants. So he decided to put on a pair of jogging pants. And apparently kept it so hidden that he would not stand up. And from what I can tell, what he was left with, I mean, by U.S. currency, it looks like he was left with $2 and roughly, I'd say about 50 cents for dry cleaning for a wet pair of pants. It was so funny. Of course, Vivian herself does show up in another episode, but it's always great to see Vivian Kudo, especially for a woman who looked great for her age. Next one, this one I thought was really adorable. Like, the kids invited to a special screening of a movie they really wanted to see by Conan's mom, and take them all there, and he keeps denying that he's related to her, even though he actually is. And apparently was moved to late, so they decided to all just take a quick nap at this guy's apartment. Of course, they all had to lay in this bed. This was so adorable. You have Mitch, you have George, you have Amy, you have Conan, and then finally Anita. And apparently it was pointed out by Vivian Kudo that Anita has this thing for staring at Conan's face 10 times a day. And of course, Conan asks her, like, I want to say something. Yeah, what is it? It has something wrong with my face. I thought it was so funny. And she basically later deduced later on that he got his abduction from his father, and his acting ability from his own mother. That's actually good. That's actually really nose right on. And I thought that the whole thing of basically on one side you have Anita, and I thought that was actually so adorable. And this is probably the first time they've actually had all 5 of these kids sleep in the same bed. And here's the thing: the guy, and of course, was a murder happened in his apartment like usual, and turns out it was actually a salesperson who just also had to be sleeping there as well because, well, they apparently couldn't show it later. Eventually, they did see it later on, pretty late, anyways. And Agasa shows up. Yeah, just like in the manga, he shows up like halfway through the story. It's like, okay, where the heck? Like, now I know Vivian Kudo, she left partway through the story because she had to catch a plane back to the U.S. Yep, but well, this is probably the first time I can think of that Anita has actually met Vivian. And apparently, Vivian has got no problem with Anita at all, though she kind of suspects that Anita has got feelings for Conan. Well, Jimmy, anyways. Yeah, it's suspected, but never fully developed when it comes to that. Yeah, but this is actually a pretty interesting little two-parter, and it turns out the reason this guy killed because apparently he ruined a final scene of a movie they made, and it also involved an actor's death, and basically it was nearly impossible to reshoot this film. It was actually a final film of a trilogy, and that's the reason why I killed him. Okay, fine. But it was an interesting little two-parter and great little character development for a few of the members of the cast. Another filler episode. Yeah, all involving a guy who fights over a backpack and the guy falling out of a partially constructed site. Yeah, following several stories. I think it's X, but nope. The guy who was kind of indirectly responsible for the guy's death. Yeah, it turns out, yep, he was responsible for his death. Excuse me. All because he had 2 cell phones to get the guy's attention. Yeah, this was an okay little two-parter. Nothing really much else to write home about. The 4 Porsches. This was interesting. Yeah. This actually starts a string of episodes involving Anita. This starts basically Nia's character development arc over the course of several stories. The 4 Porsches is basically involving 4 people who own Porsches. They suspect one of them basically being Gein's car, but nope. It's the same model as Gein's car, but it's different color. Gein's car is pointed by Conan that Gein's car is black, and this car is green. So it's not Gein's car. So, and apparently she doesn't like the car very much. Of course, they get introduced to the owners of the car, which apparently decide to all hang out in this one person's car. And it turns out the person and one of the people who actually ended up being drunk. And turns out this guy actually killed the murderer's brother, or at least didn't help him out in time. And it was a woman. It was actually the youngest of the 4, and she's 34. Everybody else is like in their 40s, at least late 30s, early 40s. And the way she killed him was a bit unusual, almost like an assassin's way of killing somebody, with a wire. Really, it's the case, a fishing line. Yeah, tied around the guy's neck, and then tying partially on her, and going like underneath the car, and tying the other end to her gear shift, and then she just rolls out the window, and that's how she kills him. Odd way, but it seems like a way a hitman, or at least a silent assassin, would kill somebody. I'm like, where the heck did you get this idea from? Because this would take probably a good 20-minute setup. Yeah. And of course, we get a chance to see, set up for, well, a few more filler episodes, secret hit in the bathroom. Yeah. They're trying to figure out what the heck is in his bathroom, and it turns out it was actually tapes left by Anita's late sister, who actually died prior to Anita showing up in the series. And the murder victim was a president of this design company, and the guy who killed him was the guy who tried to go on his own, but then he's going to kill him by poisoning him. Okay. Yeah, but the whole thing of the Black Organization, I thought that was a little more interesting in this. The bride holds a 10 Heinz to Bush. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Apparently, this is a real location. Yep. And this, surprisingly, now, normally this type of episode is reserved for canon episodes. This is a filler episode, and it's an hour long. Yeah, involving like a bride who apparently that her future grandmother-in-law apparently was not going to accept her into the family due to the fact that, of course, everyone thought because she's 2 years older than the future groom. But it turns out that's not the reason why. It turns out that the reason why she wouldn't accept her is because she's the daughter of a guy she indirectly causes death in a way, indirectly causes suicide. That's why he switched against the marriage. And All About Still in the Ring was actually quite an interesting little episode. And surprisingly, now how they get to where the grandmother is, like, apparently they get their hands on this bicycle mini car. As for where in the world they get their hands on this thing, it just, okay, Conan finds her. She apparently is held captive inside this windmill and finds her getting this thing. I'm like, where in the world they get this thing? And eventually, she's shocked to see that he's able to, like, pull a soccer ball out of his belt. Of course, this was established in an earlier episode from the previous season, where this instant belt, it's new gadget. It's a fantastic gadget. He's used in filler episodes too, where he just presses a button, has a soccer ball pop out, uses power shoes, and just kick it right in the person's face, knocking. And apparently, this guy wanted to kill the old lady with a bomb. And this guy was also responsible for the other 2 attempts on her life. Yep. And the reason why this guy wanted to kill her is because, well, 2 reasons. One is revealed this guy was actually the bride's previous fiance, and the other because he was a disciple of, well, this woman's late father. Excuse me. And it was later decided that one guy who was originally supposed to be one rocking it out, he was the one basically to do it too. Decided to do it for him. And it turns out the groom was actually an old friend of Serena's. Yeah, it's a very interesting little. It's a very interesting one episode. And it's great. It feels like a very good, well done anime movie. Yeah, because, well, it feels a little bit. The budget for this episode is a little bit bigger, but not as big as one they did for 2.5 hours. Yeah, that comes up later. Mm-hmm. Next comes the convenience store trap. Oh, forgot the end of the episode has Rachel catching the bouquet. It's really wanted them to catch bouquet, and of course you see Conan running away. It's like, oh no, Rachel's next me. She's gonna marry me. That's what he's probably thinking. Yeah, but I thought that was so funny. Yeah, the as for the convenience store trap, because it was revealed in this 2-part that Jody was leaving her job, so they wanted to throw a party. I don't. Yeah, I think they did throw it for her, but they come across a store run by an old friend of Rachel's, and she's being accused of stealing stuff, and it turns out the person who actually was stealing this stuff was, they call him a salaryman, basically an office worker who had lost his job and been living inside the store for like 3 months. Yeah, where where he was living was quite bizarre. Apparently, he was living, get this, in the ceiling above the bathroom. Yeah. And somehow he was able to afford to buy this toothbrush, and basically was selling stuff for baths, whatever. Yeah, so the guy was able. So in exchange for not pressing charges, the guy was given a job at the convenience store to pay off what he stole from the store. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as for the character, I don't think she shows up again. But it's an interesting little 2-parter. But, and surprisingly, Conan is not involved in this one at all. He shows up at the beginning, he shows up one other time after that. And of course, Conan calls up as Jimmy, asks like if she visited his house lately, And it's like, nope, I haven't. That was an interesting little two-parter, and apparently they had the end of this episode set up the next one. Apparently, that Rachel finds out with pictures behind Jodie's bathroom mirror. Mm-hmm. And next comes the 2-hour episode, the head-to-head match of the Black Organization. Two mysteries of the night of the full moon. Yeah, this was a very good episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was revealed in this episode that Jodie is a FBI agent. Yep. And James Black shows up in this episode, making his epic return since the last appearance in the show was in the two-part of Man from Chicago, which was also kind of revealed that he was definitely an FBI agent. And of course, the character Aki, the guy, he returns this episode. Apparently, yeah, he's been showing up now and again in this series. And apparently, the Black Organization know who he is. And apparently, some people refer to him as the Silver Bullet. Yeah, which is also the name of a cocktail at this party. And the party basically had a murder, obviously, because, of course, Richard Moore is invited. And Harley shows up disguised as, well, Jimmy. And, of course, Vodka kind of figures out that Jimmy might be still alive. But it's also for this episode that Jin forgets who his targets are after he kills them. Yes, he never memorizes them at all. He just kills random people because he just feels like it. Yep. Oh yeah, and because of the failure for, and of course, it's revealed that Vermouth, that is, well, of course, and get this, the Japanese name for, and apparently because it's alcohol, it's English for Belmont. That's Vermouth is. And she's also Sharon and Chris Vanyard, basically the same person. And she's an old friend of Vivian Kudos. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vivian Kudos shows up in this episode. Disguised as Medusa. Yep, she dressed up as Medusa for some reason. Yeah, she got invited to this party for some reason. Vodka got invited and dressed up as a frickin' zombie. Somehow. Yeah. But there's a shootout here. And it's also happened in another episode where police files had disappeared involving Richard Moore. Yeah, it turns out Vermouth was one who stole them. And she basically got wounded by Jodie. Yeah. And she's able to get away. And she basically decides not to take Conan to the boss because he saved her life in New York, which was explained at the start of the previous season of the show in that flashback episode, which took place after Conan at the Jimmy's First Case episode on the plane flight. Yeah, fantastic episode. I love it. Yeah. And apparently she's on vacation. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's up the whole thing of possibly Anita joining Wayne's protection, which she doesn't do that anyway, so revealed in a later episode. Which is it. And we have Find the Buttocks Mark. Yeah, this was a weird one. About a guy who apparently was slashing at people just to get attention, and it turns out it was some guy owning the same type of car that Saito drives. Yeah. And it was 3 guys. It was the guy who apparently drives terribly, and he's the one behind everything. Okay. But I would say the best thing about this episode was Anita turning down Witten's protection. And yes, those in case you're wondering, is this real in real life? Yes, well, I've heard this is real. I've heard several gangsters basically put witness protection in order to basically save them up for special cases. This was testifying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, then comes a filler 2-parter called Love, Ghost, and a Widow's World's Inheritance. Yes, this involves a attempted murder, seeing a ghost, and solving a death that happened a month prior to this episode. And something of a jewelry robbery. It's an okay episode. It's a nice, good animation-wise episode, but it's also something that apparently Amy's been upset with Conan for not believing that she's seen a ghost. Believes this person is real. But it's an okay 2-parter. It's not very interesting. The same cannot be said with the following 2-parter, which probably is canon. All over a flip phone. Yes, I've actually owned a flip phone. Yes, called the Forgotten Cell Phone, which has the army camouflage on it for some reason. Yep. The ending was the best thing about this one. A majority of this episode, a majority of this two-parter, I was falling asleep during this thing, and that's because I'm kind of tired. Because this episode was so boring. How about phone stuff and stuff like that? Yeah, quite a boring episode, but love seeing Yumi show up. Yeah, one of the best police officers. That's probably the best one uniform wise. That is a very good character, and she's probably the best thing about this particular two-parter. Everybody else, like all the rest of the stuff related to this case, is so like finding who this owner of this phone is, and this is the best thing, Richard Moore. And of course, it has the most. Also love the interesting beginning of this thing. Of course, they also do the whole hard boil monologue thing, monologue opening, which they do the same thing at the end of the two-parter. And of course, he's having coffee. If I were him, he just wanted his tongue to burn. Maybe he should, I don't know, put creamer in it. Yes, I do know people who do like it black. I know, because I prepare coffee at where I work, which is McDonald's. I pair it with black. I pair it with creamer, sugar, Equal, Splenda. Though it's mainly in the cardboard cups, not the glass cups they use in the show, the glass mugs. Of course, we use this thing all the time, and of course, it's recyclable. Yeah, this whole two-parter, most of this two-parter is like just extremely boring. I got so bored watching. It's like, oh, let's call this people for this information involving this phone. There's no murders, nothing really high stakes here. Briefly, we see Conan knock out Richard Moore just to find out that this one guy, this restaurant, was the owner of the phone. And it turns out the guy who had been seeing the whole two-parter. Now, here's kind of the thing about this particular, they call him a summon, which is kind of what they call him in Japan. He apparently was trying to get people to vote for him. Okay. Here's kind of the thing when it comes to that. People don't do that anymore at all. When I saw this, I'm like, man, this is annoying. A guy basically driving around a van, just getting on a loudspeaker saying, please vote for me. Okay? Yeah. I'm like, does this show think we're in the 50s? Because I know this was a thing back in the 50s and the 80s too. But no one advertises like that anymore. We have things called social media, TV. Do politicians in Japan do not believe using TV to advertise their political ads? Yeah, anytime we have elections here, it's basically we're bombarded with political ads for a whole month. Apparently in Japan, they don't believe in political ads at all. So let's have these assemblymen go out on the street to garner votes. And have this guy wear a frickin' sash to get his own votes. You ever heard of advertising? Yeah, this is a very old-fashioned way of advertising, but it's kind of a good thing no one does this anymore because, yeah, for a lot of people, this is a really big headache for a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah, but the ending, I think, was quite funny, and the whole result of why this whole thing was stolen, that was like crunchy, but most of the thing was just so boring. Yeah, so boring. And we have the tragedy of the fishing. This one was a little bit more interesting, involving a death of a photographer reporter who was killed over blackmail. Because he was blackmailing the murderer over the fact she accidentally killed her potential future, or a guy who proposed to her. Yeah. It was a really good two-parter. And the thing is, Serena was not doing investigating this episode. It just, okay, we have Serena there. Let's have her get knocked out by Conan to reveal all of his hard work that he did. And the way they convict her was by this piece of board that Mitch and George just happened to find in the water completely at random. Yeah. This one makes I think it's a bit random, but it was quite interesting, a two-parter. And we got a chance to see some character of the people who only appeared just in this filler episode. But it was great altogether. And plus, the guy from the ending of Season 10, he shows up here as well. Oh, and by the way, he does return in the manga. in a later story. Yeah. But that's really it. It's a pretty good season. But at least the ending was a lot better than at least the final case of the season was actually a lot better than the case in the previous season. Yeah. But a lot of really good episodes this season. Yeah. So that's really it for this particular review. Stay tuned for my Comic Con, what I'm going to do next. Okay? But to see you next review. Bye.